Hey guys, tonight, we're drifting back to ancient Sumer, where the air smells of sun-baked clay and the Tigris River hums in the distance. Picture yourself standing in a bustling city 4,000 years ago, surrounded by mud brick walls and merchants haggling over barley. Your sandals sink into the dusty street as you spot a towering ziggurat, its steps climbing toward the sky. Inside, something wild is happening. People are inventing libraries, stacking clay tablets, like the world's first nerdy Jenga game. This is the story of how Sumerians organized their library cards, a saga so dry it might just lull you to sleep. Fair warning, you probably won't survive the sheer boredom of ancient bureaucracy. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your city and local time. I'm curious where you're chilling tonight. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're in Uruk, one of Sumer's oldest cities, around 3000 BCE. The sun's relentless, and your tunic sticks to your skin as you weave through crowds toward a squat, shady building. This is no ordinary place. It's one of the first libraries, a treasure trove of knowledge carved into clay. These Sumerians, they're not just scribbling grocery lists. They're recording laws, poems, and star charts on tablets the size of your hand. Historians call this the birth of written culture, a mainstream fact that changed human history forever. But here's the quirky bit: these tablets aren't just books, they're the library's backbone, each one doubling as a kind of card in a proto-catalog system. You can almost hear the scribes muttering as they stack them, inventing organization before anyone knew what a Dewey Decimal was. You pause at the library's entrance, where a reed mat brushes your feet. The air inside is cooler, thick with the scent of dust and sesame oil lamps. You squint at shelves, well more like niches, carved into the walls, stuffed with rectangular clay tablets. Each one's a labor of love, wedge-shaped cuneiform pressed into soft clay, then baked hard as stone. You're wondering, how do they find anything in this maze? That's where the Sumerians get clever. They don't just toss tablets into piles. They're starting to group them by topic. Think hymns to Inanna in one corner, tax records in another. Historians still argue whether this was a true cataloging system or just a fancy way to avoid losing stuff. Either way, you're impressed. These folks are building a system to tame chaos, and it's oddly soothing to imagine. You run your fingers along a tablet's edge, careful, it's sharper than it looks. You're picturing a scribe, some guy with a beard longer than his patience hunched over his work. He's not just writing stories, he's laying the groundwork for something bigger. A clay tablet might list other tablets, like an ancient index card noting titles or subjects. It's clunky, sure, but it's a start. You smirk, thinking how this beats your own messy desktop folders. Oh, and here's a little joke. Why did the Sumerian librarian quit too many circulation disputes with cranky priests? As you stand there, the library feels alive, a quiet hum of order in a chaotic world. You're starting to get why this matters. Knowledge tamed and sorted is power. And you're ready to dig deeper into how they made it work. You're still in that dim Uruk library, the flicker of oil lamps casting shadows on the mud brick walls. The air's heavy with the scent of baked clay, and your sandals scuff against the packed earth floor as you move deeper inside. Those clay tablets you admired earlier, they're not just books, they're the heart of something weirder, the Sumerians' version of library cards. You're about to get up close with these etched slabs, the world's first stab at organizing knowledge. It's like stumbling into the most boring episode of an ancient reality show. but there's a strange calm in the details, perfect for drifting off. You crouch beside a low shelf, eyeing a tablet no bigger than your phone. Its surface is crammed with tiny wedge-shaped marks, cuneiform, the Sumerians' writing system. This isn't a story or a law. It's a list, a kind of proto-catalogue. Mainstream history tells us these tablets often recorded metadata titles, authors, or subjects of other tablets in the collection. Think of it as a 3000 BCE spreadsheet, but carved by hand. You trace the wedges with your finger, imagining the scribe who made this. He's probably squinting in the lamplight, cursing when his reed stylus slips. These cards are how Sumerians kept track of their literary treasures, from epic poems to grain inventories. Here's the quirky tidbit: some of these catalog tablets were color-coded. Not with paint, Sumerians weren't that extra, but by firing the clay to different shades from pale beige to reddish brown. Scholars think this might have helped sort tablets by category, like a prehistoric filing system. You're picturing a librarian grabbing a reddish tablet for royal decrees and a beige one for hymns. Historians still argue whether this color thing was intentional or just a happy accident of kiln temperatures. You lean toward happy accident because, let's be real, ancient Sumer wasn't exactly swimming in quality control. You stand stretching your back and notice the shelves aren't random. Tablets are grouped maybe by topic or owner. You spot one catalog tablet listing the flood story and lament for Ur. It's like a library card with attitude, telling you what's hot in Sumerian lit. You chuckle, thinking how your own library finds would have bankrupted you here. Joke time: why was the Sumerian catalog tablet so smug? It knew it was the only thing keeping this place from total chaos. The system's not perfect, though. Some tablets are chipped, others misfiled. You're starting to see the effort it took to wrangle knowledge in a world without keyboards or cloud backups. You wander to another niche, where a larger tablet catches your eye. It's a master list, maybe tracking dozens of smaller tablets. You're struck by how obsessive this is. Every wedge, every line is a choice to preserve order. It's soothing in a way, like organizing your playlist before bed. But you're curious, who's making these cards? Who's got the patience to carve out this ancient database? You're ready to follow the trail to the scribes, the unsung heroes of this clay card saga. For now, you linger, letting the quiet rhythm of the library settle your mind. You're still deep in that Uruk library, the air cool and musty, the faint glow of oil lamps painting the walls with a golden haze. Your eyes linger on those clay library cards from before, their cuneiform wedges glinting like tiny secrets. Now you're turning your attention to the people behind them. The scribes, the overworked nerds of ancient Sumer who carved these catalogs under flickering lamplight. Picture yourself trailing one of these guys, his reed stylus in hand as he hunches over a tablet. This is where the real grind of Sumer's library system comes to life, and it's so methodical it might just nudge you toward sleep. You're shadowing a scribe named Enkidu because, of course, he's got a name straight out of a mythology pop quiz. He's perched on a reed mat, his tunic dusted with clay, surrounded by tablets stacked like ancient Tupperware. Mainstream history confirms scribes were the backbone of Sumerian record-keeping, trained for years to master cuneiform's 600-plus signs. These guys weren't just jotting notes. They were crafting the library cards that kept knowledge from dissolving into chaos. Enkidu's current tablet lists other tablets, titles like Hymn to the Moon God or Grain Allocations, Year 12. It's a catalog, a map to the library's treasures. Here's the quirky bit. Scribes sometimes added doodles to their work. You spot a tiny sketch of a fish on Enkidu's tablet scratched into the margin. Scholars think these were either boredom busters or secret signatures like ancient graffiti tags. You grin, imagining Enkidu sneaking that fish in while his boss wasn't looking. Historians still argue whether these doodles had deeper meaning. Were they just quirks, or did they mark specific scribes' work? You're betting on boredom, because even Sumerians needed a break from bureaucracy. You lean closer, catching the faint scratch of stylus on clay. Enkidu's meticulous, but the lamp's low and his eyes are straining. He's not just copying, he's deciding what matters. Should this tablet go under religious texts or royal records? His choices shape the library's order. You're impressed, but also a little sorry for him. Talk about a high-stakes desk job. Joke time. Why did the scribe's girlfriend dump him? He kept cataloging her love letters under miscellaneous. You stifle a laugh, not wanting to disturb the guy. The library's quiet, save for the soft clink of tablets being shifted. You notice Enkidu double-checking his work, comparing his card to a pile of tablets nearby. He's cross-referencing, making sure every title matches. It's tedious, but there's a rhythm to it, like knitting or folding laundry, soothing in its repetition. You're starting to feel the weight of this place, the effort poured into every wedge and line. These scribes aren't just workers, they're gatekeepers of Sumer's memory. You're curious about where these tablets end up next, how they're stored and sorted. For now, you linger, letting the steady scratch of Enkidu's stylus lull you deeper into the story. You're still in the heart of Uruk, the library's cool shadows wrapping around you like a blanket. The scratch of Enkidu's stylus from earlier fades as you step away from his work table, your sandals whispering against the clay floor. Now you're heading toward the grand storage hubs of Sumer's knowledge ziggurats, those massive stepped pyramids that loom over the city like ancient skyscrapers. These aren't just temples. They're the Fort Knox of clay tablets, where library cards and their precious contents are stashed. The air smells of dust and reverence, and the sheer scale of this place is enough to make you yawn, perfect for easing you into dreamland. You climb the ziggurat's outer stairs, each step wide enough to trip over. At a shaded terrace, you find a chamber packed with niches like a giant honeycomb stuffed with tablets. Mainstream history tells us ziggurats were central to Sumerian culture, doubling as religious and administrative hubs where libraries thrived. These chambers held thousands of tablets, from tax records to star charts, all tracked by those catalog cards you saw earlier. You picture Enkidu's work slotted into these walls, guiding priests or scholars to the right tablet. It's like a prehistoric Google, but with more sweating. Here's the quirky tidbit: some ziggurat libraries had security systems. You notice clay seals, small stamped lumps on certain niches. Scholars say these marked restricted collections may be royal or sacred texts to keep sticky-fingered scribes out. You smirk, imagining a Sumerian bouncer checking seals like a nightclub VIP list. Historians still argue whether these seals were about secrecy or just showing off elite status. You lean toward showing off, because Sumerians loved their flexes. Remember those gold-plated statues from last night's mental wanderings? You slip into a storage room, the air so dry it tickles your throat. The niches are packed tight, tablets sorted by those catalog cards. You spot one card listing Flood Myths Shelf 3 and Royal Decrees Shelf 7. It's obsessive but calming, like alphabetizing your spice rack. Joke time. Why did the ziggurat librarian get promoted? She could find a tablet faster than you can lose your keys. You chuckle, running your hand along a niche. The clay's cool, grounding. Some tablets are cracked victims of time or clumsy scribes, but the system holds. You're awed by the effort, thousands of tablets, tracked by hand in a world without Ctrl+F. You pause picturing priests shuffling through grabbing tablets for rituals or tax audits. The ziggurat's not just a building. It's a machine humming with order. You're starting to see how those cards tie it all together like the string in a labyrinth. But you're curious, how did they decide what went where? What's the logic behind this ancient Dewey Decimal? You're ready to dig into the Sumerians' sorting tricks next, but for now, the ziggurat's quiet weight settles over you, slow and steady as a lullaby. You're still inside that ziggurat in Uruk, the air thick with the scent of ancient clay and the faint hum of city life filtering through the walls. The storage chamber's dim glow from earlier lingers in your mind, those niches stuffed with tablets, like a nerdy treasure vault. Now you're zeroing in on the Sumerian secret sauce, how they sorted those library cards to make sense of their sprawling collections. You're picturing yourself as a nosy apprentice poking around the system that keeps this place from turning into a clay tablet junkyard. It's so orderly, it might just bore you to sleep, and that's the goal. You're standing by a niche, holding a catalog tablet, your old friend, the library card. Its cuneiform lists titles like star omens and barley contracts. Mainstream history tells us Sumerians pioneered early metadata grouping tablets by content, purpose, or owner. These cards weren't just lists. They were the library's brain telling you where to find what. You notice this tablet has a symbol, a little star pressed into the corner. It's a tag maybe marking astronomy. Others might have a reed or crown for agriculture or royal. It's like ancient hashtags guiding scribes to the right shelf. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some cards used shorthand so weird, it's practically code. You spot one with just 3 wedges and a squiggle, which might mean Temple Hymns West Wing. Scholars think scribes invented these shortcuts to save space, but they're so cryptic you'd need a PhD to crack them. Historians still argue whether this was genius efficiency or a recipe for mix-ups. You're betting on mix-ups because, come on, even Sumerians had bad days. Remember Enkidu's fish doodle from that scribe's tablet. You shuffle to another niche, your tunic brushing the wall. The cards here are sorted by priority, not just topic. Royal decrees get prime spots while boring stuff like goat tallies is shoved to the back. You grin thinking how your own email inbox could use this kind of triage. Joke time, why was the Sumerian card system so chill? It had no overdue fines, just overdue goats. You're starting to feel the rhythm of this place, the way each card slots into a bigger plan. It's repetitive soothing, like stacking dishes after dinner. You examine another card. This one listing tablets by date, think year 4 of King Lugal's reign. It's precise, almost obsessive, and you're weirdly into it. The Sumerians didn't just toss stuff together. They built a system that could scale from a few dozen tablets to thousands. You're impressed, but also sleepy, the weight of all this order pulling you down. You're curious about who got to use these cards, kings, priests, or randos off the street. For now, you linger in the ziggurat's hush, letting the neat rows of clay lull you deeper into the story. You're still tucked inside that Uruk ziggurat, the cool clay walls pressing in as the faint scent of sesame oil lamps lingers. Those neatly sorted library cards from the last chamber are still on your mind, their cuneiform wedges like a code you're halfway to cracking. Now you're slipping through a guarded doorway into a fancier part of the complex royal archives where Sumer's elite hoarded their exclusive tablet collections. Picture yourself as a sneaky courtier eyeing the library cards that only kings and their inner circle could touch. It's all so stuffy and privileged, it's practically a lullaby in itself. You pause in a corridor where torchlight dances on polished mud brick. The niches here are fancier edged with lapis lazuli chips that scream VIP only. Mainstream history tells us Sumerian kings like Gilgamesh's real-life counterparts kept private libraries in their palaces separate from public or temple collections. These royal archives held tablets on everything from battle plans to divine prophecies, all tracked by meticulously carved catalog cards. You pick up one such card, smaller, smoother than the others, listing kings' edicts, year 7, and omen records. It's like a royal playlist curated for power. Here's the quirky tidbit: some royal cards were scented. You sniff and catch a whiff of cedar oil rubbed into the clay, probably to make the king's library smell less like a dusty attic. Scholars think this was a status flex, but it's so extra you can't help but roll your eyes. Historians still argue whether these scented cards were purely for show or had some ritual purpose, like warding off bad vibes. Your team show off. Because remember those gold statues we imagined a few sections back? Sumerian kings loved their bling. You glide deeper into the archive, your sandals silent on the reed-strewn floor. The cards here are guarded, sealed with those clay stamps you saw earlier in the ziggurat. Only trusted scribes or the king himself could break them. You're picturing a grumpy palace official double-checking every tablet against its card, muttering about protocol. Joke time: why did the royal librarian hate his job? Too many kings demanding rush delivery on their star charts. You stifle a giggle, not wanting to alert the imaginary guards. The system's tight, almost paranoid, but it works. Knowledge is power, and power stays locked up. You linger by a niche, eyeing a card listing tablets about foreign alliances. It's precise, almost beautiful, each wedge a tiny act of control. You're struck by the exclusivity. This isn't for the street merchants or farmers outside. These cards gatekeep wisdom, keeping it in royal hands. You're starting to wonder, did regular Sumerians ever get a peek at any library? Or was it all elite nonsense? For now, the archive's heavy silence wraps around you, its order as calming as a slow heartbeat, pulling you closer to sleep. You're slipping out of that snooty royal archive in Uruk, the cedar-scented library cards and lapis-lined niches fading behind you. The ziggurat's cool air clings to your tunic as you step back into the bustle of the city, where the Tigris glitters under the midday sun. Now you're wondering about the regular folks, the potters, weavers, and barley farmers trudging past. Did they ever get to touch those clay catalog cards? Or was the whole library game just for kings and priests? You're poking into the murky question of public access, and it's so tangled it might just bore you into a nap. You're weaving through a crowded market, the smell of roasted fish and fresh reeds in the air. Mainstream history suggests Sumerian libraries, whether in ziggurats or palaces, were mostly elite domains reserved for scribes, priests, and royalty. But there's evidence of smaller public collections in some cities, maybe attached to temples where educated commoners could, in theory, access tablets. You picture yourself as a curious merchant sneaking into one of these spots. There's a clay card listing trade laws and hymns for festivals, but it's guarded by a scribe who eyes you like you stole his lunch. Public access, more like public if you're lucky. Here's the quirky tidbit: some tablets were copied for circulation. Scholars have found duplicate clay tablets like ancient photocopies, possibly lent out to local schools or traders. You're imagining a Sumerian bookmobile, but it's just a guy with a donkey cart and a bad attitude. Historians still argue whether these duplicates mean libraries were open to the masses or just to a slightly bigger elite club. You're leaning toward Elite Club because remember those sealed niches from the ziggurat Sumerians loved gatekeeping their goodies. You duck into a small temple courtyard where a low building houses a modest library. A few tablets sit on a shelf, their catalog card nearby, listing weights and measures and prayers for rain. You're tempted to grab one, but a priest glares from the corner. Joke time, why was the Sumerian library so exclusive? It had a no sandals, no service policy. You smirk, brushing dust off your hands. The setup here feels less grand than the Royal Archives, but it's still not exactly welcoming. You're starting to think public access was more myth than reality, a tease for the average Sumerian. You linger watching a young student, maybe a scribe in training copy, a tablet under the priest's hawkish gaze. The catalog card's doing its job, pointing him to the right text. But this isn't a free-for-all. Knowledge is still a privilege doled out sparingly. The thought's a bit heavy, but the courtyard's quiet, the soft clink of clay soothing. You're curious about the cards themselves. How were they made? What kept them from crumbling? For now, you let the temple's calm wash over you, its rhythm as steady as a lullaby, tugging you toward sleep. You're standing in that quiet temple courtyard in Uruk, the memory of the guarded library cards and the priest's suspicious glare still fresh. The sun's dipping lower, casting long shadows across the packed earth floor, and the air carries a faint whiff of river mud. Now you're turning your attention to the physical stuff of those catalog cards, the clay reeds and tools that made them possible. You're picturing yourself as a crafty apprentice getting your hands dirty to understand how Sumerians turned mushy earth into durable records. It's so tactile and slow, it's like a warm bath for your brain, perfect for drifting off. You're crouched beside a scribe in a shady workshop, watching him knead a lump of river clay. Mainstream history tells us Sumerians used local materials, clay from the Tigris and Euphrates reeds from the marshes, to create tablets that could last millennia. These library cards were no exception, shaped from the same sticky stuff as their bigger tablet cousins. You pick up a damp clay slab, cool and heavy in your hands. The scribe hands you a stylus, a sharpened reed, and nods toward a blank tablet. You press it into the clay, leaving a wobbly wedge. Congrats, you're halfway to cataloging barley receipts shelf 4. Here's the quirky tidbit: some cards had tiny holes punched through them. You notice one with a neat row of perforations, maybe for stringing onto a cord or peg. Scholars think this was a filing trick, like an ancient binder clip, to keep related cards together. Historians still argue whether these holes were practical or just decorative flair. Sumerians did love their aesthetics, like those cedar-scented royal cards from the archives. You're betting on practical, because who has time for hole punching, just for fun? You try again with the stylus. Your wedge is less disastrous this time. The clay's forgiving, but it dries fast in the heat, so scribes had to work quickly. You're imagining the panic of a typo in cuneiform, no backspace key here. Joke time, why was the Sumerian scribe so stressed? One wrong wedge and hymns becomes horses. You chuckle, wiping clay off your fingers. The workshop's rhythm is calming: knead, shape, carve, bake. The scribe points to a kiln in the corner, where tablets are fired to stone-like hardness. That's the secret to their survival, why we're still ogling them 4,000 years later. You examine a finished card, its surface smooth, but etched with precise wedges, listing star charts, east niche. It's heavier than it looks, built to last through floods and fires, though you're curious how many didn't. The process feels meditative, each step deliberate, like folding laundry or brewing tea. You're starting to appreciate the care poured into every card, but you're also wondering what happened when disaster struck. For now, you linger in the workshop's quiet, the soft squish of clay, and the scribe's steady breaths pulling you deeper into a sleepy haze. You're stepping out of that clay-dusted workshop in Uruk, the scribe's steady stylus work still echoing in your mind. The ziggurat's shadow stretches long now, and the air's cooler tinged with the damp scent of the nearby Tigris. Those sturdy library cards you just saw being crafted, baked to last forever, are on your mind, but forever's a tall order in a land prone to chaos. Now you're diving into the disasters that threatened Sumer's fragile card systems, floods, fires, and the general bad luck of living in ancient Mesopotamia. It's a slow-motion tragedy so monotonous it might just hush you to sleep. You're trudging along a riverbank, the Tigris lapping at your sandals. Mainstream history tells us Mesopotamia's rivers were both lifeblood and menace, flooding cities like Uruk with little warning. These deluges could turn libraries into muddy graves, soaking clay tablets before they were fully baked. You picture a frantic scribe, maybe our old pal Enkidu, scrambling to save his precious catalog cards as water seeps into the ziggurat. Some cards unbaked and soft dissolve into sludge poof. There goes tax records, year 9. The baked ones fare better, but even they can crack if buried in silt. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some Sumerians blamed floods on cranky gods. You overhear a priest muttering about Enki, the water deity, punishing sloppy librarians with river surges. Scholars say these stories were part coping mechanism, part excuse for lost records. Historians still argue whether floods destroyed more tablets than fires, or if human error, like misfiling those hole-punched cards from the workshop, was the real culprit. Your team floods, because remember that river clay you squished? It's no match for a raging Tigris. You're now in a library chamber, post-flood, the air heavy with mildew. The niches are a mess, some cards shattered, others caked in mud. You pick up a cracked one, its cuneiform barely legible. Hymns to Inanna Shelf 2. It's a survivor, but half its data's gone. Joke time. Why did the Sumerian librarian dread rain? His job description included tablet lifeguard. You smirk, brushing dirt off the card. Fires were no kinder, sparks from a stray lamp could torch a whole shelf. You're picturing the panicked scribes tossing sand to douse flames, saving what they could. It's grim, but there's a strange calm in the wreckage, the silence of a system fighting to endure. You linger, running your fingers along a damp wall. The Sumerians rebuilt, always recarving cards and resorting tablets. It's relentless, like tidying a desk that keeps getting trashed. You're starting to wonder how they shared knowledge across cities if disasters didn't stop them. Did they trade cards or tablets to keep the system alive? For now, the ruined chamber's quiet wraps around you, its faded order as soothing as a low hum easing you closer to sleep. You're standing in the muddy aftermath of that flooded Uruk library, the cracked library cards and mildewed niches still heavy on your mind. The Tigris's damp breath lingers in the air as you step outside the city, humming with recovery merchants, shouting, donkeys braying. Now you're following a new thread, how Sumerians shared their precious tablets and catalog cards between cities like a Mesopotamian interlibrary loan system. Picture yourself as a courier trudging across dusty plains to deliver knowledge. It's a slog so plodding and bureaucratic it might just coax you into a doze. You're on a sun-scorched road to Nippur, a clay card wrapped in reeds tucked into your satchel. Mainstream history tells us Sumerian city-states, despite their rivalries, traded tablets to share knowledge. Think religious texts, legal codes, or even star charts. These exchanges relied on catalog cards to track what was sent where. Your card lists Temple Rituals Nippur Archive, a kind of ancient packing slip ensuring the right tablets reach the right hands. You're sweating, but there's a quiet pride in carrying Sumer's wisdom across the desert. Here's the quirky tidbit: some couriers used tablet passports. You notice a small clay seal in your satchel stamped with a king's emblem to prove your cargo's legit. Scholars think these seals deterred bandits or nosy officials from messing with the goods. Historians still argue whether this system was tightly organized or a chaotic free-for-all with tablets getting lost like modern mail. Your team chaotic because remember those scribal typos from Enkidu's workshop. Sumerians weren't exactly airtight about details. You trudge on the horizon shimmering. Your destination's a temple library in Nippur, where a scribe will check your card against the tablets you're hauling. You're picturing him squinting at the cuneiform, muttering about your sloppy handwriting. Joke time: why was the Sumerian courier so slow? He kept stopping to read the tablets he was carrying. You chuckle, adjusting your satchel. The system's clunky tablets are heavy roads, are rough, but it works. Cities like Ur and Lagash swap stories and laws, keeping knowledge alive despite floods or fires like the ones you saw last section. You pause to sip water from a skin, the card in your satchel, a tiny anchor of order. It's soothing knowing this one wedge-etched slab connects Uruk to Nippur, like a thread in a vast web. You're starting to wonder what kinds of texts got the VIP treatment in these trades, epics maybe, or myths. For now, the road's steady rhythm, the crunch of sand underfoot, wraps you in a calm haze, nudging you closer to sleep. You're dusting off your sandals in Nippur, the courier's road from Uruk. Still gritty in your memory, that clay library card safely delivered to the temple library. The air here's thick with incense, and the low hum of chanting priests seeps through the mud brick walls. Now you're diving into the stories those cards catalogued, specifically the mythical epics like Gilgamesh that Sumerians etched into their collections. Picture yourself as a curious scholar thumbing through these ancient bestsellers, their catalog cards like tickets to a legendary world. It's so grand, yet so fussy, it might just lull you into a snooze. You're in a quiet corner of Nippur's library, a catalog card in hand, listing Epic of Gilgamesh Tablet Series, Shelf 8. Mainstream history confirms this epic, one of humanity's oldest stories, was a Sumerian blockbuster copied across cities and tracked meticulously on cards like the one you're holding. It's not just a tale of heroes and monsters. It's a cultural anchor preserved through obsessive cataloging. You trace the wedge's title tablet number location, feeling the weight of a story that's outlasted empires. This card's a map to immortality in a way. Here's the quirky tidbit: some epic tablets had blurb cards. You spot one with a teaser line like Gilgamesh battles Humbaba Forest of Cedars. Scholars think these were like ancient book jackets hyping the story for scribes or priests. Historians still argue whether these blurbs were for practical sorting or to entice readers in a world without Amazon reviews. Your team enticed because remember those scented royal cards from the archives? Sumerians loved a bit of flair. You slip toward Shelf 8, the card guiding you like a GPS. The Gilgamesh tablets are there, heavy and etched with tales of gods and floods. You're picturing a scribe reading this aloud, his voice echoing in a torch-lit room. Joke time: why was Gilgamesh's library card so popular? It had the best circulation in Sumer. You grin, tucking the card back. The cataloging here's precise epics like this get prime niches while duller stuff like goat tallies languishes in the back. It's a hierarchy and myths rule the roost. You linger imagining the epic's creation, scribes copying it for trade to cities like the ones you trekked to last section. The card's wedges are crisp, but you're wondering about mistakes. Did sloppy scribes ever mess up a hero's name? The library's hush, broken only by the soft clink of clay, feels like a warm blanket. You're curious about those errors next, how human slip-ups tangled Sumer's neat systems. For now, the epic's grandeur and the card's quiet order wrap around you, easing you toward sleep. You're still in that hushed Nippur library, the epic weight of Gilgamesh's library card lingering in your hands, its wedges promising tales of heroes and gods. The air's heavy with the scent of old clay and faint incense, and the dim light makes the niches glow softly. Now you're turning to the human side of this system, the mistakes, the fumbles, the times Sumerian scribes turned their neat catalog cards into cuneiform chaos. Picture yourself as a nosy overseer catching scribes in the act of screwing up. It's so relatably messy it might just nudge you into a cozy nap. You're leaning over a scribe's shoulder watching him carve a catalog card meant to list temple hymns shelf 3. Mainstream history tells us Sumerian scribes, despite their training, weren't immune to errors. Miscarved wedges, wrong titles, or misfiled tablets could throw entire libraries into disarray. You spot the scribe's mistake. He's written horses instead of hymns. One sloppy wedge and the whole card's useless. You wince imagining some priest digging through the wrong niche later. These cards were the library's GPS, and a typo was like sending someone to Narnia instead of Nippur. Here's the quirky tidbit some scribes left oops notes. You find a card with a tiny scratched correction, like an ancient post-it saying, meant flood myths, not flood taxes. Scholars think these fixes were rare, a mix of honesty and panic to avoid a boss's wrath. Historians still argue whether errors were common or if surviving cards exaggerate perfection. Most duds probably got smashed and remade. Your team common because remember Enkidu's fish doodle from way back. Scribes were human, not robots. You wander to another shelf, spotting a card listing tablets that don't exist, maybe lost in a flood like the ones you saw in Uruk. Or maybe the scribe just zoned out. You're picturing him lamplight flickering, carving star charts shelf 12, while dreaming of dinner. Joke time, why was the Sumerian scribe so bad at cataloging? He kept filing his grocery list under epics. You smirk, running your finger along the card's edge. The errors pile up, wrong shelves, swapped titles, even cards, baked before corrections could be made. It's chaos, but there's a charm in the mess, like a cluttered desk you still love. You pause, the library's quiet wrapping around you. These mistakes didn't kill the system. Scribes kept carving, fixing, sorting. It's soothing, the persistence of it all, like reorganizing a messy drawer. You're starting to wonder who else used these cards, priests maybe in their sacred libraries. For now, the soft clink of tablets and the scribe's muttering lull you the imperfections of Sumer's system, as calming as a slow tide pulling you towards sleep. You're still in that Nippur library. The echo of scribal slip-ups and botched library cards from the last corner fading as you move deeper into the temple complex. The air's thick with the scent of myrrh, and the flicker of oil lamps casts jittery shadows on the walls. Now you're slipping into the priestly domain, where sacred libraries hold tablets guarded like divine secrets, their catalog cards etched with holy precision. Picture yourself as an awestruck novice tiptoeing past stern priests to peek at their system. It's so solemn and fussy, it's practically a ticket to dreamland. You're in a small, hushed chamber, its niches sealed with those clay stamps you saw back in the ziggurat. These are no ordinary tablets. They're sacred rituals, omens, prayers to gods like Inanna or Enlil. Mainstream history tells us Sumerian priests controlled temple libraries using catalog cards to track texts vital for pleasing the gods. You pick up a card, its cuneiform listing divination records, shelf 1, and hymns for new moon. It's pristine, as if the gods themselves might check it. Priests relied on these to find the right tablet for a ritual, because flubbing a prayer could mean divine tantrums. Here's the quirky tidbit: some cards were blessed. You notice faint traces of oil on this one, maybe from a priest's anointing ritual to purify it. Scholars think this was to protect the library from bad juju, like a spiritual antivirus. Historians still argue whether these blessings were standard or just for high-stakes texts like eclipse predictions. Your team high stakes because remember those scented royal cards from the archives? Sumerians loved adding pomp to their paperwork. You glide past a priest, his robes brushing the floor as he cross-checks a card against a tablet. His focus is intense, like he's defusing a bomb. You're picturing him muttering prayers while sorting, because one wrong move could anger a deity. Joke time: why was the priestly librarian so tense? Misfile a card, and you're dodging lightning bolts. You stifle a chuckle, not daring to disturb the vibe. The cards here are stricter than in public libraries. No doodles or typos like Enkidu's fish or that horse's fiasco from last section. Everything's sacred, controlled, almost suffocatingly perfect. You linger by a niche, the card in your hand heavy with purpose. The system's tight, but it's calming, like arranging candles before a meditation. You're starting to wonder what happened to these libraries as Sumer's power faded. Did the cards survive? For now, the chamber's silence, broken only by the priest's soft chants, wraps you in a gentle haze. The sacred order of it all, nudging you closer to sleep. You're easing out of that sacred chamber in Nippur, the priest's chants, and the weight of those blessed library cards still lingering like a faint echo. The temple's incense-heavy air clings to your tunic as you step into the fading light of the city, where the Tigris murmurs and the ziggurat's shadow stretches long. Now you're turning to the twilight of Sumer itself, how its empire waned, and with it the intricate card systems that held its libraries together. Picture yourself as a weary traveler, watching the slow crumble of a once great civilization. It's so melancholic and drawn out, it might just hush you into sleep. You're wandering Uruk's streets now, quieter, the bustle of merchants and scribes dulled by time, say around 2000 BCE. Mainstream history tells us Sumer's decline came from invasions, droughts, and shifting rivers which choked cities like Uruk and Nippur. Libraries suffered as ziggurats were abandoned or looted, their catalog cards buried or shattered. You're in a half-ruined library, niches empty, a cracked card at your feet listing trade laws, shelf 6. It's useless now, a ghost of the order you saw in those bustling days with Enkidu or the Nippur priests. Here's the quirky tidbit: some cards were recycled. You spot one with fresh cuneiform scratched over an older faded list, like a Sumerian palimpsest. Scholars think desperate scribes reused clay during lean times, erasing old catalogs to track new meager records. Historians still argue whether this was practical thrift or a sign of cultural collapse. Why save a card if the library's gone? Your team collapse. Because remember, those flood-soaked tablets from Uruk Sumer's systems couldn't outrun fate. You kneel, brushing dust off the card. The wedges are sloppy, rushed, not like the pristine priestly ones from last section. You're picturing a lone scribe, maybe the last in Uruk, carving under a dying lamp as invaders loom. Joke time, why did the Sumerian librarian stay late? He thought he could catalog his way out of an apocalypse. You smile sadly, the library's silence heavy. Some cards were carted off by conquerors, Babylonians, maybe repurposed for their own archives. Others just crumbled victims of time and neglect, like that typo-riddled horses card from Nippur. You stand the city's decay sinking in. The Tigris still flows, but the libraries, the cards, the obsessive order, it's fading. Yet there's a strange peace in this loss, like watching leaves fall. You're wondering how Sumer's ideas lived on maybe in the libraries of later empires. For now, the ruined chamber's quiet, the faint wind through broken walls, as soothing as a whisper, pulling you deeper into a sleepy fog. You're standing in the crumbling ruins of that Uruk library. The ghostly library cards and their faded wedges still scattered at your feet, whispers of a lost Sumer. The Tigris hums softly beyond the broken walls, and the air carries a faint chill as dusk settles over the city. Now you're tracing the long shadow of Sumer's cataloging obsession, how its clay card systems echoed into modern libraries, from dusty archives to the digital databases humming in your world. Picture yourself as a time traveler, connecting ancient wedges to today's barcodes. It's so vast, yet so gentle. It's the perfect fade into your bedtime haze. You're stepping out of the ruins, imagining a line stretching from Uruk to a sleek library in 2025. Mainstream history tells us Sumer's cataloging laid the groundwork for later systems. Babylonian, Greek, even medieval libraries owe a nod to those clay cards. You're picturing a librarian scanning a book today, her computer screen listing titles like Sumer's Hymns, Shelf 3. The text changed, but the urge to tame chaos with metadata. That's pure Uruk, born in the ziggurats you explored. Those cards, like the one you held in Nippur, were the first step toward ISBNs and cloud servers. Here's the quirky tidbit: some modern libraries still use cards for rare collections. You're imagining a dusty university archive, a librarian flipping through paper index cards to find a manuscript. It's not clay, but it's a cousin to Enkidu's fish-doodled tablet from way back. Historians still argue whether Sumer's influence was direct. Did scribes pass the baton, or if humans just keep reinventing order? Your team direct, because remember the intercity tablet trade. Sumer's ideas traveled far, even through floods and invasions. You're sitting now on a broken Uruk wall, the stars peeking out. The Sumerians' cards with their typos, blessings, and recycled clay feel alive in your memory. You're chuckling at the thought of a digital horses mix-up like that Nippur scribe's flub. Joke time, why do modern librarians love Sumer? They're still cleaning up cuneiform-level messes. The connections soothing a thread of human fussiness, tying you to those ancient nerds. Your phone's library app, with its neat categories, is a ziggurat's great-grandchild. And that order, that persistence, feels like a warm hug across millennia. You lean back, the night air soft. The Sumerians' world is gone, but their need to sort, to save lives in every click and scan. It's calming, like tidying a shelf before bed. As you linger, the story slows, ready to wind down. Wind down. You're resting now, the Uruk ruins dissolving into a gentle blur. The Tigris's murmur softens, a quiet ripple under a sky heavy with stars. Those clay cards, their wedges and quirks, fade into the night, leaving only their echo, a whisper of order, of care, of humans trying to hold the world together. You're safe here, wrapped in the long arc of time where scribes and librarians, ancient and new, share the same quiet dream. The air grows lighter, the ziggurat's shadow melts away, and your breath slows, matching the rhythm of a distant river. Let the details slip, cards, clay catalogues, and feel the calm settle deep. You're drifting, carried by the hum of history, toward a soft, endless sea of rest. Sleep now gently as the stars keep watch.